really fucking up my computer. So I have half the presentation in the slideshow, half the presentation will be complete freestyle. Anyway, you are welcome to interrupt me at any time. So, I am part of the Arduino group, so I will put our website here. As I guess that some of you might know, Arduino is an open hardware platform that is used for prototyping. It has been adopted by a huge amount of universities and educational centers for teaching people in the use of electronics in art and design. And the reason why I came here today is to tell you a couple of stories and to tell you a bit more about which is our policy, how we work as an open source project, and how we believe that it's possible to make sustainable open source projects. So, start my slideshow. Please show. Thanks. So this is I like this project very much because I gave one student the brief of designing a counter for a bomb, and he casted a whole bunch of 7-segment displays in the soap and gave this kind of like washed up digital display where it's impossible to know what the bomb is going to explode. And we basically like how it looks like, but it's a little bit related to when a project starts to escalate. The project starts to escalate, comes a time when you have to become almost as effective as a company just to make things work. And this is what has happened to Arduino during the last year. And this has provoked a lot of reactions, both good and bad. And we feel from the Arduino group that we have to go out and stand up and explain what's going on, just to make it easier for everybody to understand which are the next steps we're going to take. So I called my presentation Hi is 5, and my computer is having a really weird resolution, so it's I is 5. But you can see Hi is 5. So, and I will start telling you a couple of stories about people I've been meeting during the last year. I mean, to run an open source project is a lot of work. I've been, during the last 2.5 years, I haven't been at the same place for more than 3 weeks in a row. So I've been just like moving around. And I've met a lot of people that are interested in the use of open source. So I'm gonna tell you 3 or 4 stories of different people so that you can get a picture of the type of things we find. The first story is about Julian, and he's an ITP graduate. And his story, I mean, he one day decided to go to Mexico, fall in love. About 6 years ago, he went for a weekend and never came back to the US. And he lives there and works for the multimedia center in Mexico, DF. And he got really hooked in the idea of using electronics in his work. And he's facing the problem that it's really hard to import Arduino boards into Mexico. So he has to smuggle electronic boards over the border using his condition of American citizen. So every now and then he goes with an empty backpack and smuggles a bunch of boards back into Mexico DF. So this is one of the cases we found. Carlos, who is a multimedia artist, he's a Colombian, but he's living in Buenos Aires. He works for a company called Studio Lateral, who is quite successful. I don't know if you're familiar to the situation in Argentina, but it's like prices are similar as here. It's just that money is worth 1/4. So it means that their life is 4 times more expensive in terms of stuff. So if they buy an Arduino board, which costs 20 euros without taxes, for real, it's as if we were buying an Arduino board costing 80 euros. So on top of that, they have the problem that they have no reseller in the country, so they have to import from Chile. So when the board comes from Chile, they have to actually bribe the guys at the customs office for about 150 bucks. So an Arduino board ends up costing 150 bucks plus the actual price, plus transportation cost, plus the cost of money, cost of life. And Arduino is still the cheapest prototyping platform they can get. So as you can imagine, it's not the best situation. The story I just told you is actually true. I mean, the time I spent in Buenos Aires last year, these guys were building up a project and they bought some boards from Chile because there's a distributor in Chile. The boards arrived and they got stopped at customs and they had to pay 150 bucks to get them out from there. And here we have it's called Rosa. Let's say in Rosa is one of these, Rosalinda, something, I keep on forgetting her name. And he's a professor in the Fine Arts School of Rosario in Argentina. And the situation they face is that when they want to teach anything about digital arts, they have to rent a room at an internet cafe because at their school, not even the secretary has a computer. And we're talking about Argentina in this case. So you can imagine that this is the type of cases we are finding where we try to do the best, try to bring platforms for people to work with, try to create all sorts of things, and we keep on finding these type of cases. And it's not just all the people finding these cases, it's also us. So when we were prototyping our latest design, which is the Arduino 10.000, we made this kind of hit where Arduino had, as a project, had manufactured over 10,000 USB boards. So the manufacturer felt like he wanted to make a special present to the Arduino team, and he manufactured a series of 30 of these red boards, like a special thing. And he shipped them to us. At that time it was May, I was living in Korea, so he shipped me these boards as a present, and the boards were not worth the amount of money I had to pay to the customs to get the boards in. So even us are having to face these problems where, I mean, we're realizing that even though we have managed to establish resellers all over the world, so right now you can get a board in your hands, wherever you are, in less than 5 days. If you're in Europe, you can get it in 24 hours, or the States or Canada. But if you're in Mexico, you can actually buy and get it in 5 days, or Argentina, 5 days. I mean, it will go in 2 days, we'll get stopped at customs, you'll have to go to customs, you'll have to bribe people, and you can get the thing anyway. So, but still, in some cases, it becomes really unfair because people are not really having that money to get access to those tools. Oh, this was just a funny picture. It was an accident. So, now we're here at Piksel, and what's happening right now is that I didn't expect to find this. Like at Piksel, there are several art pieces in the exhibition that are working with Arduino, like this one, and this one, and this one. And also there are workshops that also working with Arduino and presentations that are using Arduino to control different things. So the tool has spread a lot, and it has spread because of very special conditions that somehow we made like good design decisions when we created the tool, and it has worked out really well, and this is inspiring people to create their own tools. But the big mistake is that people think that we are somehow getting rich, so they think that Arduino is through PayPal making the Arduino team amazingly rich, which is a complete misunderstanding of the whole thing. So, of course, I'm being paid, but I'm not being paid by the Arduino group. I'm being paid by organizations that want me to go there and teach. So I have to actually sweat to get my money. So I'm paid by universities, culture centers, companies, whatever. I mean, my latest gig was for Samsung Electronics in Korea, but I had to work the whole thing. So Arduino boards are producing money that is being stored in a bank account to do something else I will explain later. So, since there are over 20,000 Arduino boards out there, the situation is that we're starting to see a lot of clones popping up. So I made a lecture 1.5 weeks ago at Hongik University in Seoul, South Korea, and 3 days later, I had one of the slides that says, free to copy, like this big. Okay, 3 days later, some of the master students were sending me this picture, which is a Arduino, they call it Arduino DMB, which is an Arduino board. And in essence, it does absolutely the same things that Arduino board does. It's just narrower and with a different form factor, and it just designed for them to use on the breadboard. But exactly like these guys, we find these people from the Arduino project from Italy, the Arduino project from the US. Actually, the Arduino project has provoked quite a big fight on our forum because they claim that the Arduino project is not free enough because we are retaining rights on our name. So it's like Arduino project is a completely open project. The whole software is GPL because first of all, the software is not ours. It's based on processing, which is GPL. Then the whole hardware is started in Creative Commons 2.5, now it's Creative Commons 3.3, and all the reference designs are available online. And the documentation is produced by the community, so the whole documentation is obviously open. But there is someone claiming that even the name should be for free. But this guy happens to be somebody that created perfect copies of our designs, started to sell them online, and he was so unlucky that he copied one design that had an error because our website got hacked, and when we loaded the website again, we misplaced one of the files. He copied one of the files, manufactured it, and he was selling boards that were having an error, basically. So he got really upset with us, saying that we were putting false designs on the website. And we're talking, well, maybe if you were not copying everything, ripping off everything as it is, and understanding what you're doing, you wouldn't be making mistakes. But okay, he keeps on doing that. These designs that you see here with my name on top, Quartillas, I haven't seen them, I haven't manufactured them, I haven't got a single euro for them. And this guy still claims that we are not allowed to use our name just for us, which is kind of interesting. So there are other projects like this one where some engineering students in Spain, they decided they wanted to make their own board, and in order to finance it, they made 5 boards instead of 1, so they sold the other 4 on eBay. Spanish eBay. There is someone that is selling the breadboard and the components to make your own board all by yourself, as if you couldn't just buy the thing. There is someone that is like hacking some existing prototyping tools and selling them on eBay again, just like charging for his effort in soldering these parts together. People that are making their own reference designs based on Arduino and that are fully compatible with our interface. Some really interesting Taiwanese people that made the so-called dual-core Arduino board. There is actually this project is very interesting because they are using the same chip twice, which is much cheaper in Asia, like the Atimega 8 chip. In Sweden, where we live, it costs about 4.5 euros, quantity 1. In Korea, it costs 1.5 euros. And I guess that in Taiwan will be about 1 euro. So this Arduino board in total is costing 3.5 euros with all the components. So they took some open source software that can control the USB port. So the chip on top runs the USB to serial converter, and the chip on the bottom does the whole Arduino functionality. So it's ridiculously cheap, very effective, and very clever design. And I like this website because the same guy that is selling Arduino pre-programmed chips is selling a board to cut olives. So this is just I just made I found it on the Spanish eBay 5 minutes ago, and I thought it was just hilarious. So if I had the chance, I would buy both from him, the chip and the board to cut olives. Things that, as one of the Arduino designers, I'm extremely happy to see the development that this is taking, and I actually encourage people to design their own boards. We all do. I mean, for example, the case in Mexico that I explained earlier. Mexico is a country that, because of the agreements it has with the US, gets access to a lot of basic components. So it's very cheap to find all the components that compose an Arduino board. And they could, if they could just manufacture the circuit boards and solder them, they can probably make them for very cheap. So the only request we have from them is that they just don't call it Arduino, they call it Mexicoduino or DFduino or whatever else, because we cannot be giving support to for eventual hardware failures from other people. And the funny thing is that when we explained this thing on our forum, almost everybody was happy, but the Freeduino guy. And so I keep on wondering if anyone is going to complain about Ubuntu being called Ubuntu. So you can copy Ubuntu perfectly, as far as you don't call it Ubuntu. And I don't think that anybody complains, and everybody understands that. And the funny thing is that the Ubuntu developers, they are paid. They get a salary. We don't even get a salary. And we have to fight for keeping our name. There are some other really successful designs, like this one, Lilipad, that's made in the States, and I really love to show it, because it opens up to a completely different world of applications. As Arduino was developed to make it very, very easy to prototype very quick, Lilipad is meant to be making wearables. So you literally sew the circuit to your clothes with conductive thread. So you sew the... Sorry.
Sew is like a lawsuit.
It's fantastic, the direct correction. This is Pedro Google star. So please keep on correcting me. I don't want to be wrong on the stream. So Lilipad is actually one of the projects that we have made an agreement with. So I like to show it because with some projects, the Arduino group makes agreements. And making an agreement, it doesn't necessarily mean that we make an economical agreement. We make an agreement that they use the name because we fucking love this project. Because it's, as I said, first of all, it has less components, so it's cheaper. So it's more accessible to other people. Second, the shape is beautiful. And third, it's meant to be used by people that are making a completely different type of applications. So there are a lot of fashion schools right now that are using this board to, how was my word, sew electronics to clothes. So we basically made an agreement with them where they can use the name Arduino, and in exchange, we just advertise them as part of the project. So this is the type of agreements we are looking for. But in the meanwhile, there are people that still have to do things like this, which is a 1-bit Arduino-based music synthesizer. I think it's very interesting because it was just a 1-bit the music instrument workshop here. Just 1.5 weeks ago, I was in Korea making the exact same workshop, made with Arduino-based software. And I would be very happy to be able to share the code with the workshop made here. This is another example. And, well, this is another example of a board. This is about the situation in Chile. Chile is one of those countries where we have a distributor called Olimex. Olimex is a distributor that is actually teaming up with the American company SparkFun, who are experts in prototyping tools. But anyway, things are not so cheap. Even though they are as cheap as we can make them, people prefer to try to make the things by themselves. So these are examples of boards that have been handmade in Chile. So there you have it. Okay, you can't really read it, but it says up there, it says made in Chile, Escuela de Artes y Oficios Digitales, which is a bunch of crazy people that meet in a basement and they teach each other programming and hardware once a week. And they made their first workshops just a month ago. So they also made double-sided boards, which are a total disaster, but they're beautiful anyway. So this brings me back to the question of which is our role. And when I say our role, I mean about the Arduino developers, the so-called Arduino team, which is a group of 5 people living in different countries who started the project. And many people don't really know how the project started. And it was basically Massimo Banzi and me having an aim each for getting our own tools for teaching. Because I get about 200 students per term, and basically we don't have the money to buy prototyping tools. The idea was that the students had to buy their own tools. So we covered the cost for the first prototyping series from our own pockets. It was 350 euros each, which means about 700, a bit more in total. And that was the first Arduino prototyping series. And when we saw that the thing might work, we had to, again, put another 2,000 euros up to 6,000, because we were 3 partners, to manufacture the whole thing. And I have to say that in less than a month I have got all my money back. So I put 2,000 and I have got all my 2,000 back. Between that and today, I mean, it was like a year and a half, almost 2 years have passed, and the Arduino group has sold over 20,000 boards. And of course, I'm not going to lie to you, of course the system is making money. There is a manufacturer that is being paid for things, and we've been saving money to be able to prototype new devices, and at the same time saving money to be able to doing something with it. And this is the Arduino, so-called Arduino fund, that is up to, I think it's over 10,000 euros right now. And we have to say we have to spend this money because the Italian taxes are gonna eat them, like 10,000 euros. So we have to spend it as soon as possible. So I'm gonna invite you to apply for boards later on. But anyway, we're discussing now which is our role, because suddenly we've been creating a new way of thinking about how to prototype and a new way of thinking about how to do things. And we've been proving that it's possible to like invest and get back in something that like hardware, to the point that there's people out there that are basing their whole income in manufacturing Arduino clones and selling them, in teaching Arduino workshops, or becoming professors, or getting jobs at architecture offices because they know how to prototype. I mean, this is a fact. So now, at some job calls, they say require prototyping skills with Arduino wiring or similar platforms. So we've made it there. So the question is for us, okay, what should be our role now? Because we get an overview of the things that are happening. So it's when we have decided that the Arduino group has to finally really move into being a foundation. So far we've been discussing a lot about being a foundation, but never made it in paper. But now we're in the process of making it happen in paper. And the idea is that the extra income produced through manufacturing is going to go to philanthropy. So we're going to spend, this year is going to be 10,000 euros. We don't know how much will be next year. We will never know. In financing people like these people from Chile that can't afford their own boards, or people from Mexico that have to smuggle boards, or people in Argentina that have to bribe the customs. So we're going to put as much effort as possible in bringing the tools as far as possible. So, and this is again like bringing up a lot of questions, because the Arduino group is organized in 2 levels. So that there is the Arduino team, which is 5 people, and the Arduino development team, which is over 30 people, which is actually open and anyone can join. So there is discussion about who is the Arduino team and who is not, and why we are the Arduino team, and I mean, the answer is very simple. We are the ones that were putting 2,000 euros one day and making the project happen. And we are the ones that had to decide about how the software had to look like and so on. But then afterwards, people are just contributing freely to just keep the project running. So we expect to be able to, through the foundation structure, allowing your people to join, getting like a legal status, getting presidents, secretaries, etc., that will allow people to join legally into this thing. But then again, I said the project has to be sustainable in some way, so we also have alternative ways of financing. So for example, Dave Mellis, who is responsible for the Arduino software, he's been hired by a company that gives him 1.5 days a week just to develop the Arduino software. So he basically managed to convince the company to pay him to do this. And in my case, I managed to convince Samsung Electronics to pay me to design 50 new boards that are going to be available now to download. Now they've been testing them. So this is basically the model we aim for. I mean, we're invited by people to do projects, to teach at places, and we just reuse the money into the foundation. So yeah, if you're interested in any of these designs, you can just ask. I could go in detail what each one of them are doing, but it might be a bit boring. This might be the most interesting one, which is a design that adds 32 outputs with high power transistors. So you could be driving 32 lamps, and you can daisy chain it, what means that you can have 32, 64, etc. And it's been used already before even releasing it. It's been used in 2 different art installations. And I think, just for the pleasure of it, I could show you one picture of one of those art installations that's going to be opening next week. So this is one of those art installations that's been built with one of these boards.
And where was it built?
Eh?
Where was it built?
Where? Well, okay, one of the artists is Mark Rivas. I haven't explained this. And it's a project that comes to Angar, so Angar people are here. And basically the idea was to represent kind of an opera with insects. So they wanted to have like 5 or 6 insects that were taking different roles, and they are dancing to a pre-recorded soundtrack. And so they basically are constructed as marionettes. So with a couple of servo motors, we can control the insects moving, and with a bunch of hack scanners, we move the objects back and forth in the scene. And that requires to control, I mean, you don't need too much data to communicate from the computer, but you need to control a lot of input-outputs. So one Arduino board is enough to do the control, but you need something extra to control all those outputs. So the 32 extra outputs board allows you to move all the motors for controlling all these different insects here. So the opening will be in Granada next Saturday. So you have the time to pass by, go south, and go to a other place.
Can you, what is the scale? How big are those insects?
This is 90 centimeters wide, 40 centimeters deep, 40 centimeters high. It's like 90, 40, 40. So the insects are this size.
Okay.
So it's really small. So it was really, actually the brief was really funny because it said micro robots 5 centimeters big. And I said, we don't have the money or the time to do anything like that. So we have to really look around for alternatives, and we started to analyze the possibility of making it as marionettes instead. And has been really challenging. I have to collaborate with a lot of people. Some of them are present in this room, but they prefer to remain anonymous. So, I'm sorry. So this is one of the boards, as I said. So the possibilities are endless. There is a board to have 64 analog inputs to read 64 sensors at the same time, or a board to control relays, or a board to control. And the whole research and the whole income needed to make those things happen, has been coming from Samsung Electronics. So one of the big issues here has been to convince a company as Samsung to pay to design something that is open source. So that's the kind of economic model we are following right now. Convince people to pay us to keep the project going. And I don't know where my slideshow was anymore. Here. So that's it. If you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them. I don't like to talk too much, so I made it short. No questions? There's a question there. Do we need a microphone?
If you can repeat the
Okay.
otherwise the microphone.
So according to your experience with Arduino, what do you think is a good strategy for sustaining open source projects? Like teaching or going to like companies like, for example, in your case, Samsung, and getting new works, or do you have other ideas, for example?
So the question is, according to my experience, which would be a good strategy to maintain an open source project, like going to companies or go commercial, or, well, I mean, my experience is that it's completely different to make something in open source, like, I mean, open software or open hardware. Because with open software, you can do this thing mostly in your spare time. You actually invest your own time, and people will run anything in their computers. The problem with the hardware is that it's material, you have to manufacture it, and I mean, the kind of like cost escalates with the kind of like amount of people you want to reach. So you need different strategies. So first thing you need is an investor. And in Arduino, we were lucky that we were 3 people that could invest directly. It was like, I have it in my bank account, I do it now. So, but now, after all this time and all these things, I think that the good strategy is, if the project starts to work, I mean, first not bother too much. In the first months you have to be like very flexible. We've been super flexible for 2 years, not really understanding what was going on and so on. But when things start to work, I think that the logical path